This episode's made possible by Planful.
Hey everybody, Frank Terrell. I'm the CFO of Arcos Labs. Delighted to be here. You are listening to an awesome podcast, a CFO Thought Leader. Enjoy.
This is episode 961.
When I look at the retail data, I'm looking at velocities, right? So it's sales per store. So it's units per store per week is the measurement, right? So that's probably the most important measure at this point. It's just, how many cans are you selling, per store? That's your velocity. Second would be ACV, which is all commodities volume, right? And that tells you where you are, right? Like how many stores are you in? It's not the same as like a distribution measure. It's one that actually weights in the value of the store. So it's a good measurement of like, is your product getting out there into all the different stores? Those are, probably the two most important measurements that I'm looking at.
Hi, it's Jack. On today's show, we speak with Greg Robbins, CFO of Odyssey Wellness. CFO Greg Robbins began his career inside the realm of Big Six accounting houses, an experience he tells us laid the foundation for a career in financial operations and strategy. However, he credits much of his leadership style to his time at Red Bull, where he learned that real development comes from hands-on experiences, insightful feedback, and formal training, a philosophy that he's carried forward throughout his career. You'll hear that and much more on today's episode. We'll begin after this.
Hi, I'm Rowan Tonkin, Chief Marketing Officer at Planful, and we're a proud sponsor of CFO Thought Leader. At Planful, we're empowering teams just like yours to drive peak financial performance in every corner of your business. What sets Planful apart? We have purpose-built applications for every department, from FP&A to accounting, marketing to HR, all with built-in financial intelligence. This means we can get you up and running within weeks, and it requires minimal IT involvement. So you can rapidly and seamlessly engage everyone across the business in your key financial processes. Best of all, you can't outgrow us. We take the pain of growing away with an unmatched ability to scale with you. You have an endless runway with Planful. See why over 1,300 customers around the world choose Planful as their flexible, user-friendly, end-to-end financial performance management platform. Go to planful.com and see how you can make financial performance a team sport in your business.
Hello, we're speaking with Greg Robbins, CFO of Odyssey Wellness. Greg, welcome.
Thanks. Thanks for having me.
So, Greg, we're going to begin where we always do, which is to ask our guests to look back for us and try to identify some of the experiences they feel prepared them to become a CFO. What would come to mind for you?
I think, obviously I had a good start. 6 years at Ernst & Young, worked on several clients, but I think there's a couple that come to mind. One was called Flowserve, and it was a combination of two companies that merged together. And, a couple of things to highlight there was, travel, right? So it was going to the client site in California, which was great. But, some of the challenges that we faced, it was a combination of two companies that were totally different. And, the biggest challenge was just trying to get information from the client, right? You're on a budget, you're trying to get through it as efficiently as possible. And really the client, in this case really wasn't receptive, I think, to having the auditors around. It was, like pulling teeth almost. So, to me, it was a little bit of conflict, that you had to work through, right? You had to find the answers, be efficient. And, the challenge was that, the client really, one, I think, didn't understand a lot of their accounting records, so then they kind of pull back, and then they don't share because they don't really have the answers. And then you have to assess, right? So you're not there to fix their books and records, but really evaluate, are these numbers fair?
Are you checking in with the partner? Are you checking in with a partner who is saying, you know what, this does happen every once in a while? and it's a it sounds like a communications issue. It's a lot of things.
Yeah. Well, this was happening at all levels, right? From the partner down to, I think I was an experienced staff or a senior on that engagement. And, the partner was kind of getting, the ghosted, if you will, right, from the client. And, he's kind of pushing down to the senior manager, okay, take care of this. And eventually we got to the point where we had, their chief accounting officer in a room with, these files that were assembled. It was basically 2 binders. They're saying, okay, here's all our account recs. And I was given the responsibility to kind of go through it and assess, are these things, a pile of paper, or are they kind of real, what you would expect. And it turned out to be a pile of papers, more or less, so they would make it look like a lot of work was done, but they more or less kind of printed out like stuff out of the general ledger, but there was really no, meat to it. And so that was kind of a tough and interesting conversation because the chief accounting officer wasn't the friendliest guy. And it's definitely kind of managing personalities, managing, all aspects of the audit to then look at kind of the bigger picture for the company. Yeah.
Well, that's a challenging environment, which we don't hear about too often. Although I don't think it's that uncommon. I think if many finance leaders can look back on their public accounting days, and there was one particular client that really they found themselves in a uncomfortable position now and again. I want to give the listener some visibility into the path ahead of you. You're going to make a career investment. I always do like to highlight the numbers of years that finance leaders invested along the way. Again, it was nearly 6 years at Ernst & Young. You then go to Nokia, and it's a 7-year investment. They're in the Dallas-Fort Worth. I think that was their regional headquarters at the time, U.S. headquarters at the time. And then it's on to Red Bull, where you're there for more than a decade. You're there 11 years in the finance function. So, but let's find out first about Nokia, where you had really after Ernst & Young, and you made this investment of years, like I mentioned. Tell us something about the opportunity that led you there.
Yeah, I think I've always kind of gravitated to these companies that have been kind of high performing, exciting. That's what really draws me in. And Nokia at the time was like one of the fastest growing telecommunication companies. They couldn't make enough phones. They had manufacturing plants in Dallas area. They had it in Mexico, Brazil. That was North America, right? They were a global company. They were on fire, and they ran those plants 24/7. And if you remember back in the day, this is an interesting story because like Nokia, comes up of like, hey, you remember this company, right? Because it seemed everybody had a Nokia phone that kind of candy bar style, changeable faceplates. Everybody loved them, right? It was the time where, you had these older phones that were huge, and people would walk around with them, the city man. And, maybe there's a car phone, right? But they were just a status symbol, right? But then they started shrinking pretty fast down to the handheld phone that, everybody really needed. I think at some point, and then it was, I think fashionable. I mean, there was so many different aspects around the phone at the time, that made it exciting. And Nokia, was the clear kind of leader globally. There was challenges in the U.S. marketplace for Motorola, so they were kind of on the forefront of kind of higher end phones, which was the sweet spot. These mid tier to higher end phones, the flip phone, if you remember. And Nokia, interestingly, kind of stuck to their principles. Is saying, hey, this style, this candy bar style, is what the consumer wants. It's a better phone. It has a lower failure rate. But what they didn't recognize was the fact that the U.S. consumer really wants that flashy phone, right? And they don't care if it breaks after using it.
Looking at the timing here, and you were at Nokia until about 2008. But what arrives, of course, is the iPhone, which certainly changes that marketplace a great deal. But up to that, these were among the most popular phones, from what I recall.
Yeah. I remember finding somebody had printed out phone manufacturers that existed, and this was around 2007, so a little bit before I left. And it was 10 years back from that point, right? So 97. And there were a lot of names I didn't recognize on that list. I was like, wow, this is interesting. And I thought to myself, I'm like, all right, well, Nokia had a 41% global market share. This company is going to be around forever. And now I look at it and I'm like, okay, fast forward, and they're still around, but not like, what they were, obviously. And the job at Red Bull came along. Got a call from a recruiter. Hey, this company, Red Bull, they're looking for somebody in Dallas office. I mean, everything just kind of came together and made a lot of sense. It was like 10 minutes from my house. It was, this company, when I started looking into it, did so many neat things. And then, of course, I went out that night, bought a Red Bull, and I'm like trying it for the first time. And then he interviewed the next day.
During the time you were there, 11 years, can you give us a sense of how that company grew?
Sure. So I think when I started in 2008, the U.S. numbers, the North American numbers were about 1.6 billion in sales. So they started in 97 in the U.S. They started in Europe initially, right, into Austria and Switzerland, and then migrated to the U.S. in 97 and really built the category, the energy category. But they grew, quickly, obviously, from nothing to 1.6 billion in a little over 10 years at the time. So pretty sizable company when I got there, but the growth rate continued. It's a solid company with just this organic growth that's happened. When I left in 2019, it was roughly 5 billion in retail sales. So it just continued to grow, and the category has been strong.
You were you're on that controller track. Can you tell us how your world was different from your years at Nokia? I mean, it's a different industry. It would just be interesting to learn, as you compare the two roles, how energy drink industry is so very different in certain respects that even as a finance executive, the challenges were different, let's say.
Yeah, I think one of the things I noticed most was the culture, right? When you look at Nokia, I would say it's more like an engineering type company, right? Super focused on making the best phone they could. And it was run more or less like an engineering company, very like disciplined and, focused on costs, right? And at the end of the day, it was kind of a job where, it was a good company and an okay place to work, but nothing compared to Red Bull. Red Bull was a sales and marketing company, right? It's about the brand, right? So it's flashy. They doing exciting events all the time, and the culture was that as well, right? So the people working there, generally younger, we would do a lot of things outside of work that were a lot of fun, and it was a blast working there. So, to me, it was like going from, some boring, college dorm to the frat house, so it was great. In terms of
Are you partnering with the business differently, though? Was there a different attitude where finance was perhaps more welcomed into the discussion?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think at Red Bull, it's very much that way. And, you'd see it in the titles, right? We were referred to as a business partner. And the idea was, all right, you're not so much the guy that's making sure the books get closed and the bills get paid. You're there to help other people be successful in what they're doing, right? So taking what as a finance professional, right, looking at things from a finance lens, and challenging a sales guy, challenging the marketing department, right, on what they're doing, right? Because a lot of times, like a sales guy would be thinking about how do I grow my top line revenue, right? That's what they're super focused on all the time. But when you look at a business, you want to make sure you're profitable. You want to make sure the cash flows are proper, right? So they're making decisions that impact profitability and cash flow. So you got to get them to kind of think about those as well. So a lot of what I was doing was, working with them on just budgets, tools, challenging them on their decisions they're making. We ultimately came to like developing a business acumen course. So a lot of the guys, they were good at what they did, right? The sales guys are a marketing guy, but, they didn't really understand a lot about, the finance, the, different things like a balance sheet or P&L cash flow statement.
So
right?
that course, was that would reveal to them, sort of business allocation, why we need to spend more money here, but not there, because that's not profitable growth for us. Here it is. I mean, was that the nature of that?
Yeah, I mean, that was part of it. We would start by explaining, the budgeting process, right? So we would look at the business and, a variable budget, right? So if our revenues are going up, we're allocating a bigger budget to their department, right? And just how those things were done, it wasn't so much a black box, right? It was, here's how things work and the rationale behind it. So they kind of understand, right? And then, so it's really about, making things relevant for them and what they do. And then also explaining things. So it's not like just, a lot of times say like, you're the office of no, right? So you would be saying, well, you can't do that, right? But trying to get more to like a solution for them, that made sense.
So Greg, was that a consultant that came in to create this curriculum or?
No, we did it. We did it ourselves within my team. So I had some directors that were underneath me that, I got the team together. We talked about, okay, how do we do this? We actually created an online tool, and we had two things. One was a live training that we did with the different groups, but then we also then moved into like a tool that was developed with voice actors, and we had some cartoonists that created the content, in terms of like how it looked and operated. We would actually write the script, and we'd be able to pick like the voice actors and all those things. So it was kind of fun developing the course, right? And thinking about, okay, how is it, you're going to do this? Is it, a bit of like a teaching part, and then it moves into, here's some questions, but then like trying to create some graphics behind it too. So it's actually turned out pretty good. And we moved into like a global, globally it was rolled out. And we had some teams in Austria that did some other work similar to that because they liked it so much.
Did you feel like you understood the sales mindset when you think back about yourself? Here you are developing some educational tools for the sales team, and you're trying to be mindful of, who is the salesperson who's going to sit down and use this tool and why they would want to use it and accept the input that it's going to offer them.
Yeah, no, I think you had to establish credibility with the sales guys, right? So you couldn't just go in and tell them how to run their business, right? You had to have an understanding of the business, right? The commercial side. You'd have to be able to add value, right? Before you were more or less kind of let in, right? Where they would work with you. So it wasn't just that you're the finance guy and they had to listen to you. It was more like, hey, they see the value you're bringing, right? And you're coming up with ideas. You're helping them to do their job better, right? So that's what you had to bring to the table, and you had to figure that out. And we did it through, the trade execution. So a lot of guys were experts in certain areas, right? In terms of like pricing, promotional analysis. These were areas that the sales guys weren't necessarily very strong in, right? It's kind of spreadsheet work or, somebody grinding into a ton of data that's available, right? So that's a lot of what, we would do. And we would work with the sales guys saying, hey, all right, you ran some promotions. It wasn't that effective. Here's a better way to do it, right? And so we would give them promotional guidelines. We would analyze a promotion they did and come back with a better way to do it. So these were things that they, sometimes they would push back on thinking, hey, I got all the answers. But once they started seeing, the numbers, right, and seeing, oh, well, okay, this does work, makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Then you're now working as a team, right? And you're working towards a better solution. And it took a little while to get there, right? It wasn't something that happened overnight.
Well, that is certainly an interesting chapter from your years at Red Bull. And I want to point out to the listener that you leave Red Bull and you step in to a CFO role in the realm of energy drinks. Is that right? And was that a recruiter, by the way? Were you recruited?
No, it was actually a bunch of guys from Red Bull went into Bang, and I was able to connect with them, and they brought me in. It was actually happened pretty quick. I was brought to the founder's house, and very interesting.
Was it a startup or? And no, again, it was called Bang Energy. It's still
Bang Energy. Yeah, VPX. It has a couple names. VPX Sports and Vital Pharmaceutical was really the parent name. But everybody knows it as Bang Energy. That was 95% of the sales.
But so a group of Red Bull executives had already been recruited away, and then it was time to bring some finance muscle into the organization? Is it just that simple?
Yeah, well, so the founder had brought over a lot of the Red Bull guys, so he really liked Red Bull. He was very passionate. He had, a dislike towards Monster, so I think kind of had a good foot in the door with the Red Bull name. And I was able to get an interview pretty quick with them and come on over. But
was your connection with a finance executive? I mean, I'm just trying to, or was it maybe with a sales executive who'd already gone over there?
Yeah, no, it was a sales team. A lot of the guys I had worked with, a lot of what I was talking about before, right? I had established a lot of good relationships, and those guys, just reaching out to them. I saw they were over there, and they're like, "Hey, I'm with the owner right now, and they're scheduling the interview for next week." So it was that quick, and that kind of easy, I guess, in terms of that networking and how powerful that can be.
Well, it looks like one more reason to build that relationship with sales. You never know. Listen, we might have a few more career-related questions for you, Greg, a little later, but right now, let's find out about Odyssey Wellness. Tell us about this company. What is it about? What are its offerings?
Yeah, things have changed. I've been doing beverages 15 years, and I've seen it, but the landscape has changed. The consumers want healthier beverages, especially the younger consumer. You're talking to the millennials, the Gen Z. They want these products that gives them the functionality they're looking for, right? So the energy, the cognitive, but they also want the healthier version of those. And that's really what Odyssey is there, and it gives the consumer. We do have 3 product lines. So there's a hydration product, and then we have a core product, which is the kind of start to the production of how it got to where it is. It's 85 milligrams. And then now we have a higher caffeine version of it. It's the 222s. But it's basically a mushroom base. So we leverage the lion's mane and the cordyceps mushrooms. The lion's mane really helps you with the cognitive, right? It gives you that clarity and the focus. And then the cordyceps give you the endurance, really, or more or less the energy behind it. And it has a lot of those active ingredients in the product. It's 2,750 milligrams of mushrooms in the product. And to me, it's clean energy. So you look at the ingredients, it's got monk fruit for the sweetener. The caffeine comes from green tea, has the mushrooms in it. But it has a lot of kind of what I call healthier or good ingredients, and low calories as well. So when I look at the energy category, all these energy drink products that are on the market, have a lot of artificial flavors and sweeteners to them, right? This is a product that I think consumers are really drawn to, really because of the functionality, and then it has a lot of good flavors associated with it. And it's something new, right? There's a lot of these energy drinks, and really it's been dominated by Red Bull and Monster over the years. And then you've had a lot of other players trying to come in and take some of the share. But I think it's time now where it's you got consumers' tastes are changing, and they're looking for these healthier alternatives.
Where can we get this currently? And again, I'm in the Northeast. You're down in Florida. Where is this available?
Yeah, we're in the natural channel. We're in the food channel. We're on e-com, so places you can actually find it. You can find it easily on Amazon. You can find it in the grocery store at Wegmans. You can find it at Publix. Any kind of natural type store, you're going to find it. We're moving into the convenience channel. So we're in 7-Eleven. We're in a lot of the independent convenience.
Bang Energy as well. That was in Florida. Am I right? What is it about energy drinks in Florida? Is it a home plate there for that industry? Or
it's interesting. There is a lot of beverage here in South Florida. You have Celsius is based in Boca Raton. You had Bang in Weston, Florida, and then we're in Fort Lauderdale. There's also some other beverage distributors and beverage companies in addition to that, but there is a fair amount of beverage companies and energy companies, and specifically.
you've got some stage, early stage funding behind you. But give us a sense of your priorities stepping into the role.
Yeah, well, definitely, the funding, right? So we're our startup mode. The company's been around since 2021, so it's relatively young. It's on a fast pace. Our retail sales were $400,000 last year, and this year we're $4 million, right? So it's 10x growth, and we're on this high trajectory of growth, and we have big expectations going into next year and then beyond. So obviously, we've got to fuel the growth through some funding, but also, putting the things in place, to scale the business. So that means like people, processes, and talent, and different tools, right? So in those different areas, I'm looking at systems. We brought in a lot of folks from Bang. A lot of my connections there, I've been able to network and bring them over. So we're up-leveling the talent. And then, the processes too, right? So there was a lot of things that, we're working on now just to make sure that we can be efficient, and focus on what matters.
But when you look at the numbers, is it an Excel spreadsheet? I mean, are you doing anything to really understand how the business opportunities are maturing? How do you see into that world?
Yeah, so we look at the retail data. We buy the data from Spins. So there's a couple different syndicated data that you can buy. There's IRI, there's Nielsen. Spins is good with the natural channel, so we have that information, and we keep an eye on just our retailers, the overall category with that, and look at right now. It's really about velocities. How's the product doing? How's it turning? What's the repeat buys?
Do you expect to do another capital raise within the next 6 months?
Yeah. We've gone through some investors, through accredited investors, and we're looking at some other opportunities now as we go into 24.
When it comes to shelf space, will we see this in the Walgreens, or not frozen freezer, but in the refrigerator there anytime soon, or are you looking into these large outfits that can distribute?
Yeah, we have national distribution through KD and Unify, but we're moving towards a DSD model. So we have some ABI, Anheuser-Busch distributors already signed up. So we have JJ Taylor in kind of our northern part of Florida here. We got a couple states covered. Georgia, Michigan's been a hot state for us. We got California. We're bringing on Texas. But we're bringing out a lot of big retailers. We have Publix already. We have HEB that's coming online. We're looking at doing a deal with Costco. So we have a lot of big retailers that are lining up to take the product. Some have already taken it, and it's doing well. So we're seeing the velocities improving. We're seeing revenues increasing, as I mentioned before. What's great is
get a little more specific for us. What metrics are you looking at before your first cup of coffee in the morning, or before your first Odyssey elixir in the morning?
Yeah. No, when I look at the retail data, I'm looking at velocities, right? So it's sales per store. So it's units per store per week is the measurement, right? So that's probably the most important measure at this point. It's just how many cans are you selling, per store? That's your velocity. Second would be ACV, which is all commodities volume, right? And that tells you where you are, right? Like how many stores are you in? It's not the same as like a distribution measure. It's one that actually weights in the value of the store. So it's a good measurement of like, is your product getting out there into all the different stores? So those are, probably the two most, important measurements that I'm looking at.
And you're looking at your cash.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. When, we run a, P&L, I'm looking at the bank statement every day, right? We got, investors cash coming in. We got, a lot of the sales flowing in, right? So obviously I'm keeping an eye on cash flow. We do a cash flow meeting every week. So obviously managing the cash is critical.
Well, we'd always like to ask for a finance strategic moment. This might have been any time during your career. Might have happened this morning to you, or might have been 10 years ago. We don't care. What comes to mind when we ask for a finance strategic moment?
Sure. Well, I think here at Odyssey, I'm able to leverage a lot of my experience. And, when the founder, Scott, is asking, okay, what is it, we can do, right, to really grow this brand? I leverage, my knowledge. And I look at things like the data itself, where is it, we can really grow? And the answer is convenience. So when you look at the category, 75% of all sales go through the convenience channel. We're only in 1% of that channel right now. So, the company started in the natural channel and it's done well. We have the highest velocities. We have a great ACV in the natural channel. We're making a great foothold in the food channel. But there's still so much opportunity out there, right? Which is really the convenience channel, the club channel, the mass, right? So, it's being able to understand the retail, footprint, where the opportunities are, and then work with the sales team. The other opportunity is really getting with the right distributors, ones that are selling your product into the store. They're not just bringing it to the stores and fulfilling orders, but they're actually helping you sell, right? And that's your DSD, a 3-tier model, right? So it's using the ABI network, right, and all their personnel they have out in the field selling to then sell your product. So you're not just, 100 people, you're 10,000 people, right? Because you're leveraging the resources of all the distributors. So that's how you grow the business quickly, right? So you got a product that sells, you got a product that the consumer wants. Now the trick is, all right, how do you get into all the retailers? How do you get good distribution, right? And where are those opportunities? The other thing is looking at the data, right? So it's like, you can run some reports saying, okay, here's a store, and you can give it to the distributor saying, okay, here's your opportunities, go get it, right? So it's been able to utilize some of that data and be able to pinpoint where those opportunities are, so they're super focused and efficient on getting out there and selling.
From episode 857, this is 1 Minute with CFO Razik Jowell of Flowcast.
And the biggest challenge for us a year from now is making sure we can reach as many customers as we can. And from a finance perspective, that's how do we stand up sales and marketing offices in new geographies to reach more customers? How do we continue to be the best in class with all our new products as we have been with our core products? And then how do we enable the company to continue to go fast? We've gotten a lot bigger. Went from sub 200 employees to nearly 600 in the blink of an eye. And so how do we continue to provide the right tools and trainings for every person to do their best work?
We're going to jump to our mentoring round, where we'll ask you several quick questions intended to inform and inspire future finance leaders. We want you to think back to the first time you stepped into that CFO role back at Bang. That first 30 or 60 days you stepped into that role. What is it that you wish, if you could go back in time and just give yourself a piece of advice, what is it that you would tell yourself?
I think make sure that you're leveraging your workforce, right? Your team as much as possible, right? Like there's so many things to do, and it's really about managing your team and having the right people on the bus, right? So I think that's the most critical part, to the job is hiring the right people, coaching them, and getting them engaged, right? You have an engaged employee, they're 6 times more productive, right? So I think leveraging those things just allows you to do your job better.
Nice. What's one thing most people might not know about you? Something generally the world doesn't know about, Greg? Right.
Well, I like adventure. I like to get out. I've done some things. I think the traveling to places like Nepal, you're going to a place that's set back in time, and it's unlike any other place. It was one of the companies I had worked for in my past. They're actually building a project. It was a hydro dam there. Actually, interesting enough, they only have 15% of the population has electricity in Nepal. It's a very poor country, and the company was building power plants, and that was one of the projects was to build a dam. It was a great opportunity, right, to go to some place like that and spend some time there and work with the people.
Wow, that had to been quite a chapter. We are up to our final question for you, Greg. This is when we ask you to look forward and share with us your priorities as a CFO over the next 12 months. What would those priorities be?
Yeah, I think it's getting proper capitalization for the company. I want to make sure that we have the right team in place. And those are, I would say, the two top priorities. Outside of that, obviously, it's managing the growth, scaling the business, and everything that comes with it.
Greg Robbins, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
All right, thank you.
Hello, Thought Leader listeners. As you have perhaps already heard or even seen, we're now featuring the career lessons and moments of strategic insight shared by our CFO guests as Thought Leader videos. You can now find these videos on our blog at cfothoughtleader.com and, of course, our newsletters, but also on LinkedIn. If you haven't already, please go ahead and follow our CFO Thought Leader LinkedIn company page, and you'll be certain not to miss a single Thought Leader video debut. CFO Thought Leader, the #1 thought leadership platform exclusively for and by CFOs. As always, thank you for listening.